Boy, a trade would make that. If the Houston Texans like Sam Darnold, that would be the perfect situation for the Philadelphia Eagles. Welcome in, South Jersey. Another edition of Extending the Play, AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Your best Eagles, your best NFL talk in all week. You get that with myself and Ryan Rothstein, who is in the studio with me. Listen from Ryan to Ryan 7 to 10 on the fix. And it's more apropos this week, Ryan. It's extending the play because we do it all week, and here we are on Saturday. So we give the Eagles Eagles fans a little bit of extra. And I also think it's apropos because, the biggest story going around the NFL right now is about two quarterbacks who are known for extending the play, two of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Houston Texans, it's been that way with Deshaun Watson. Now, all of a sudden, the Seattle Seahawks and Russell Wilson, his agent, is going out there on the record. You never see this, Ryan, on the record saying, well, we want to play in Seattle, but if we don't want to play, here are the four teams we will go to.
Right. Like, hypothetically, if we were forced out of Seattle, not on Russ's, on own terms, here's the four teams.
Which
Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I think it's pretty amazing. And the Dallas Cowboys are one, so Eagles fans are not happy about that. But I don't know if that's necessarily the case, because if you make that move for a Russell Wilson-type quarterback, who's great, there's no doubt about it, but you're not only spending a lot of money once you get him on the football team as one of the highest paid quarterbacks in football. At one point, he was the highest paid. Obviously, now he's been surpassed by Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. But still, I think number three. And then you have to give up all the value in turn and assets to get a player of that caliber, which starts with multiple first-round picks. So there's always different ways how to build a football team. And
sure.
That's what the decision is always about. So it's not that slam dunk you might think it is for anybody. But, boy, I got to tell you, when you look at Wilson and Watson and the shift, the sea change in the NFL as a whole, and quarterbacks just seizing power.
Right.
I don't know, but I look at it like, and we always talk about it with coaches. We got done talking about it with Doug Peterson. Like, why doesn't Doug go for more personnel power? Why didn't, at the height of his Super Bowl winning sort of gravitas, why didn't he grab for that? Mm-hmm. And I always say you should want it because there's not enough time in the day to do right. Personnel and coach. And now we have players thinking, think about the ego and the hubris to think, I know better than you. Are the Seattle Seahawks not trying to get better? Has there been any evidence of that team saying, oh, no, we want to stink, Russ. We're not trying to help you out. Where does this come from?
Yeah, and it's more surprising, and I want to ask you your thoughts more about Deshaun Watson a little bit later, but Russell Wilson's a Super Bowl winner for Seattle.
Yeah.
He allegedly has a very good relationship with the head coach. Like, he's been there, he has the coach he wants, he has the ring. At the end of the day, if Russell Wilson gets traded, John, what is going to be the number one factor or reason behind him leaving? It's him wanting more power? That's it?
That's it. It's ego.
Like what?
It's ego.
It's
and
crazy.
You think about his career and where it started. And obviously, the grad transfer, the third-round pick, the undersized, the build, and all of a sudden he turns into this star. And he was a star quarterback, still is a star quarterback, still is one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. No question about any of that. Phenomenal player.
Absolutely.
But, the difference between Russ on that rookie deal when he was that overachiever, and everybody was like, how do you miss on this guy? Just because he's short, and the Eagles locally wanted him, and they couldn't get him. They wasted time, and they ended up getting bit in the you-know-what. And the Eagles, Andy Reid loves to talk about he wanted to draft him and all that kind of stuff. But and then you start to get good, and you win the Super Bowl, and you go back to the Super Bowl, and you're a play away, basically a yard away.
1 yard. One decision, 1 yard, however you want to phrase it. But, yeah.
From going back to back, and then you're a superstar. You're a full-fledged superstar. You got the wife. You got it all.
An all-time superstar, because you can argue he already is a superstar.
Yeah. No question.
Yeah, you know that. Yeah.
And then your spouse is more famous than you, sort of like Tom Brady.
Right.
And
the blueprint. Tom has the blueprint.
Tom has the great blueprint. But the thing, why Tom has the great blueprint? Obviously, he's got an ego.
Did you ever see? You have to.
Did you ever see Ted, the movie?
Oh,
Ted 2?
I love Ted, yes.
Ted, the sequel, which is not as good as the original, but the sequel has a great scene with Tom Brady.
Yes.
And the teddy bear wants to steal something from Tom Brady.
Yes.
And it glows. So
course.
we'll just say that.
Yeah. Obviously it glows.
Yeah. So, there's some ego involved. There's no question. But I really do. I'm amazed that these guys are thinking, and there's a story out today, Saturday morning on Pro Football Talk, about how Russell thinks Pete Carroll and his sons, who were coaches on the Seahawks, one has left, they don't answer to anyone. And I'm thinking to myself, well, he is the head coach. I mean, as far he does obviously answer to, he's got to work with John Snyder, the general manager. He's got to answer to the owner, but that's it. I mean, that's part of what it is.
That's just it. It makes me laugh because we're talking about the complete opposite here in Philadelphia, right? We're talking about the higher ups are too involved, and what this story is allegedly saying. Where is everyone as far as the front office is concerned?
Well, and from Russell's standpoint, but I take that a step further. The reason I bring it up is, to me, that if you take the next step, that means that you shouldn't be answering to anybody, and that's where you get into trouble. And you and I have talked about sort of that NBA-like mentality throughout, and it seems to be seeping more into football. And I see it with both in Houston, Deshaun Watson, which we'll also get to after the break, and we're going to wrap this up and bring it into the Eagles and the draft and why it matters. These two particular quarterbacks on this edition of Extending the Play. But to me, it shows you that these quarterbacks are starting to think that they shouldn't have to answer to anybody. And you should be coming to them and saying, hey, Russ, who do you think we should take in this draft? I mean, where does that end? And if you're the agent, don't you have to at some point sit them down and say, look, I mean, you're great. We've made this money. We've had all this success. But what the heck is going on here? Unless, and I'll leave it at this before the break run, unless you're just trying to get out. And this is your way of being disagreeable to get to a new situation. And I almost kind of hope that's the case.
It's an interesting theory. I didn't really think of that. But,
I mean,
that would be such a Russell Wilson way to get out of something. Like, how can I not come off like a you-know-what and get out of the situation?
It's in some ways, as I said, that would be the best way to go. Because if you are the Dallas Cowboys, if you are the Chicago Bears, if you are the New Orleans Saints, and I forget the fourth team, but we'll look that up. Those are the
Bears. Did you say
Bears?
Bears?
I said Bears. It was Dallas, Chicago, New Orleans, and there was a fourth team that he was interested.
Cowboys. Oh, you said Dallas. Dallas, Cowboys,
Dallas, Chicago,
Bears,
New Orleans, and there's a fourth team, and we'll look it up in the break. But
okay.
And we're going to get into, as I said, we're going to get into Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, why it matters for the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, that's what it is. It's about in South Jersey. So more extending the play, more football talk after the break here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
You're listening to the JAKIB Media Sports Network in partnership with AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Subscribe to the JAKIB Media channel on YouTube for access to all daily sports content.
Welcome back. Extending the play, AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. And like the man just told you, subscribe to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. You can get all of our stuff, Ryan and myself. The middle, everybody in the JAKIB Media Sports Network at the JAKIB Media YouTube page, JAKIB. We've been blowing up there. We want to thank all the listeners. Continue. You're going to get daily content, just overload of content, I would say. And it's going really well from that aspect. But back to the issue at hand, Ryan Rothstein, and that's the quarterbacks and this, what do you want to call it, privilege? You want to call it entitlement? Those are loaded words in today's world, but I do think from the NFL standpoint, and again, we tie in Carson Wentz to this because I think a lot of people looked at him and said, why don't you fight for your job? Why don't you do this? Why are you so upset that the Eagles drafted a quarterback in the second round? And I say to those people, you're being really provincial if you don't know what's going on in the rest of this league, because this is how NFL quarterbacks act. And now you're seeing it with Russell, Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, all of them. This is not unique to Philadelphia.
No, and let me say this. Do you think Carson would have acted the same way coming off of his, air quotes, MVP season than he did now?
Well, he should have. That's probably where it started. That's the point. When you build up...
Yeah.
It really it has to do with the contract. I mean, let's be honest.
Sure, yeah. It's all about the contract.
Yeah. So when you sign that 4-year, $128 million extension, and remember at the time, he's been passed. That's how it works. He gets lapped. But at the time, that was the most guaranteed money ever given to an NFL player. Mm-hmm. So that's a pretty big deal, in other words.
Yeah, they're saying we feel like you are or are soon going to be the best in the NFL or one of the 3 to 5 best in the NFL.
Exactly.
Bottom line, that's what that says.
And there's sort of an underlying current that you're our guy.
Sure.
We're not going to draft a quarterback in the second round.
Not true.
Less than, at the time, that was April. He had signed the extension in June of the prior year. So it was less than a calendar year. A
lot changed in that calendar year, though.
Did it, though? He still played pretty well. He still played. I don't think, Ryan, I don't think things changed because when the Eagles made that pick, there was no intention of this guy's here to compete with Carson Wentz. That was more of, okay, he got the concussion. This is 3 consecutive seasons he wasn't able to finish because of injury, even though the concussion obviously, that's bad luck. That's not.
It's not his fault.
Yeah, it's not like the ACL or the stress back fracture. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, I mean, and the Eagles said, we need a backup quarterback because the whole mentality was they were in the playoffs against Seattle and Russell Wilson. They were forced to play Josh McCown because of the concussion.
Who played pretty well.
And when you add into the fact he played with a torn hamstring that he got in the second quarter. What a tough guy. Captain America, Josh.
Seriously.
And so, let's be honest. You could argue if Josh was healthy and Josh didn't tear his hamstring,
they win that game.
who knows? He might have done it getting out of bed because he's 40 years old earlier. And I sprained my foot sleeping this week, Brian.
Yeah.
Right. I told my wife that. She's
You're out
looking at
2
me.
to 4.
Yeah. But it's killing me. And I have no idea why. I went to sleep. It was fine. I woke up and it's killing me. So that's what it's like getting older. And that's what it's like for Josh McCown. But we joke, the point being that the Eagles thought they could have won that game with a backup quarterback that was ready to go. And so that was the mentality. Okay, we love you, Carson, but you're injured all the time. We got to have something in reserve for this type of situation.
Yeah, and this is the franchise that just, coming off a Super Bowl win with a backup quarterback. So it makes sense. Okay, Foles is gone. We need depth at that position. Let's go after the rookie. And weren't there some veteran names and options they could have went with that maybe could have caused more of a stir?
They could have, but again, and part of it was also they just signed that extension the prior year.
Right.
So they didn't want to go with an expensive backup quarterback. They wanted the cost-effective route that you have under a rookie deal. So in theory, and as you know, I've always called this a vacuum pick. In theory, it makes a lot of sense because you have a guy under contract who's talented, who you think can be a good backup quarterback for 4 years at a really cost-effective rate. So all of that made sense from a strategy standpoint until. And this is what makes personnel difficult. You got to deal with the person face to face, eye to eye.
Yeah.
And you got to explain this to them and explain that you shouldn't be worried. You shouldn't be upset. And by the way, I'm sure the Eagles did this. I'm sure they tried to do it. But that's what you can't take into account is how other people feel.
Yeah, and that's why I brought up would he have reacted the same after his MVP type season, because I would have to assume, John, that his confidence was already dwindling. That's why he reacted that way.
Well, I think his confidence was dwindling for a number of reasons.
Exactly, and not all his fault.
No, Nick Foles, I mean,
sure.
We know.
Yeah.
There's a statue, blah, blah, blah.
Right. It doesn't help things.
Yeah, why build a statue immediately? Yeah, isn't that something for 20 years down the line?
I mean, Philadelphia has the weirdest statues in the world. Let's just be honest, right? We have a fictional statue. It's in Rocky. We have a backup quarterback. Come on. Makes no sense.
Immediately, though. I mean, I'm
immediately,
saying,
right.
Yeah, I'm saying like at the 20th anniversary or the silver anniversary, way down the road, you say, oh, let's do a statue. Let's immortalize this moment.
Yeah.
You don't do it 10 seconds later.
Yeah, as soon as he caught the pass, they got on the phone. All right, we head down there. We're building it.
I mean, think about that. I mean, Tampa Bay, obviously, second Super Bowl championship. But, between 1 and 2, there's a lot of down years in Tampa Bay.
Yeah. Almost 20 years.
Are they gonna replace the pirate ship with the 2 boats with a drunk Brady throwing the Lombardi Trophy to Gronk? Are they going to build a big trophy in the end zone?
They should.
Maybe they would. They should. Maybe they will 20 years from now, like normal people.
Brady will still be playing, so.
Yeah, that's true, too. You got to wait till he retires, so probably not.
Yeah, exactly.
But, yeah, all of that, I mean, the Nick Foles and Carson, and I agree with Carson. I've always agreed with Carson. He was a not big part. They don't get to the Super Bowl without Carson Wentz. They just don't.
No, they don't. But that doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter in the perception and the impact after the fact of what really transpired. Because the bottom line is he wasn't there in the postseason, and the smart person, the front office executive, they all can see that. But the fans and even the teammates and how the seasons right after that Super Bowl win played out, like there was just so many factors there where you just felt like Carson was fighting a battle that was fixed, that he could really never win. That's where you have to take in the human effect. Yeah.
And you have to realize that really
Messed with him.
Yes, it really messed with his head, and they should know that. I mean, they're with the guy every single day.
Right.
I know it. How do they not know it?
Right.
One of the great stories I always tell, because, Jason Peters didn't play in that Super Bowl. He had tore his ACL and was a big part of it, and you always saw him sort of as a de facto extra offensive line coach trying to get Halapulu Bati up to speed. And he did a great job with that. But then they were at training camp the next year, and some Yahoo from some television station outstate that just comes in once in a while didn't know Jason, doesn't know that, Jason's like the godfather of the Eagles. You better approach him. You better
bodyguard.
you better show your deference if you're going to approach him.
Right.
He's 6'4". He lapped 350 a couple years ago. He's a pretty intimidating presence.
I would say so. Yeah.
That's to the players. Never mind the.
Yeah.
So somebody went up to him and looked him dead in the eye and said, "Hey, Jason, how exciting is it for you to get back and maybe win a Super Bowl yourself someday? Super Bowl ring yourself someday?" And he just looked him dead in the eye and he said, "Already got one." Mm-hmm. In his mind, he knew what he meant to that team.
Players know, yeah, but the media and maybe even the average fan, so to speak, if you're not dressed and making an impact in the game, in that Super Bowl game, you didn't win it.
Yes.
You didn't win it.
Exactly. But what I'm saying is, Jason Peters had the security to say and essentially bleep you.
Exactly.
I got one.
Yeah.
He knows who he is. He has confidence in himself.
He wasn't insecure about it.
Not insecure at all.
Right.
Knows he's going to the Hall of Fame. Carson, I always said, I even said it to him personally. I said, you should take that tax. Already got one.
Yeah.
I mean, and he just never did. And he let it wear on him. And that's where sort of the rabbit ears and the social media, as Jalen Hurts calls it, the rat poison. I think it got to Carson Wentz.
But to be fair, and this isn't fair, but let's use Kevin Durant as an example really quickly, just because he won multiple rings with Golden State, and there's people out there that says he doesn't have any, and that's insanity. But like the point is, as a star athlete, you need to be validated, whether you realize that consciously or subconsciously, and whether you acknowledge that or not. That's just the reality as a star athlete, a star quarterback, a star basketball player. So for Carson, he still needs that validation. He's not at the point that Jason Peters was at in his career, where he can be more secure about saying, I got one.
But I do think it comes down to personality. Like, I think there's a lot of players like Carson Wentz, and there's a lot of players. Charles Barkley, I mean, Charles never won. Obviously, for years was blocked by Michael Jordan. Mm-hmm. Man, he always had so much confidence. He would always say he's the best player in the world. And this is during the apex, and he's probably number 2. So it's not like he was really good,
off.
But he wasn't Jordan.
No.
And everybody knew he wasn't Jordan, but you couldn't tell him that.
No.
And I always respected that, because I was always like, well, that's the way you got to feel, isn't it? And Frank Reich, interestingly enough, was talking this week, and he mentioned that. He couldn't talk officially about Carson Wentz because it's not, the deal itself can't be official till March 17th. But he kind of tap danced around it, and he was talking about the confidence in players and how he's seen the best players in the world lose confidence at times, but you got to find a way to bounce back, and that's a big part of it. And the confidence, the entitlement, Deshaun Watson, the quarterback situation as a whole in this league, that's what we're talking about on this edition of Extending the Play. And I do think it's going to be interesting, because this is going, believe it or not, these quarterback situations in other parts of the country are going to affect the Eagles in the draft at number 6 overall. And that's because our old friend Joe Douglas and the New York Jets at number 2 overall are in the position to do basically whatever they want at the quarterback position. They have draft capital, they have money, and if it gets bad, if it gets so toxic for either Houston or Seattle, that's a team that could trade for either quarterback. Now, Russell said it didn't put the Jets in one of his 4 teams, but that could always change.
Yeah.
Deshaun seems to he's got the Jets on the top of his list, and then they could take a quarterback, and all this has sort of a butterfly effect on the Philadelphia Eagles, and we'll get into that a little bit more after the break. AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio extending the play, the draft, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, the Eagles. Will they take a quarterback? No, you don't want to hear that. Extending the play. More next.
The middle.
It's called the Gonza Fort Peninsula Park.
Looks nice.
It's a nice green space.
Right. Just looks like, what's the park in the middle of New York?
Central Park?
Central Park, yeah. Central Park, yeah.
Most famous park in the world.
Right. It's probably the most famous green space on the planet.
The Middle with Eitan Shander, Barrett Brooks, and Harry Mays. Weekdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern.
Welcome back, AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio, extending the play. Johnny Mack alongside my buddy Ryan Rothstein. We're talking Eagles. We're talking NFL draft. We're talking entitlements of NFL quarterbacks. Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson. What does this have to do with the Philadelphia Eagles? Okay, we're going to get to that in this segment of the program. And I think it starts at number 2 overall in April's draft, our old friend Joe Douglas and the New York Jets. Now, the Jets are kind of playing games, and they're saying, well, we don't know. We still believe in Sam Darnold. We don't know if we're going to take a quarterback. They're taking a quarterback. The only question is, are they going to take Zach Wilson, pretty much the second-graded quarterback, but just about everybody after Trevor Lawrence, who will go number 1 to Jacksonville? Or do they try to make the bigger splash and trade for a Deshaun Watson? That would be the more likely name for the Jets, only because I still think, with all the acrimony, I still think Russell Wilson is likely staying in Seattle. And even if he isn't, he's named 4 teams. His agent went on record with the Dallas Cowboys, the New Orleans Saints, the Chicago Bears, and the Las Vegas Raiders. He's got a no-trade clause, so those are the 4 places, in theory, he would agree to go to. Obviously, the Jets are not on there. But that could change. Point being, the Jets have everything you need to pick up a veteran quarterback. They have that draft capital. They have an enormous amount of money under the salary cap, so that part of it's not going to be an issue for them. And if you're a team looking to trade even a Deshaun Watson, say, a star player, you look at the Jets and you look at future draft capital and you say, even if they turn it around pretty quickly, those future first-round picks, at least the first one's probably going to be pretty good. It's not going to be terrible. It's not going to be late 20s or anything of that nature. So the Jets, to me, are the linchpin of it all. And you have the Eagles back down at 6. So this is where I bring it up, Ryan. Let's say the Jets pull it off for Deshaun Watson. Okay.
What would it take to pull that off?
Well, it's going to take the 2nd overall pick. It's going to take multiple future first-round picks.
Really? How many besides this year's
People
second?
have speculated 3 first-round picks.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. That's a lot. And
With
I wouldn't do it. But a lot, so much of it depends on your confidence in yourself. And let's be honest, the New York Jets are the New York Jets. We were talking off air. If you're Russell Wilson and you want more power, or you're Deshaun Watson and you don't like the dysfunction in the Houston Texans, okay, you want to go to the New York Jets?
Yeah, good luck, buddy.
Yeah. I mean, how much better is that? But nonetheless, we all know. I mean, we know athletes. They think the grass is always greener. They think the next avenue is the better avenue.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not the first guy to think that way.
No, but if you're the Jets, I mean, look at I just pulled up their quarterbacks over the years, okay? They had Brett Favre in 08. Then after that, Mark Sanchez, and Greg McElroy, Geno Smith, Michael Vick for a couple games, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Bryce Petty, Geno Smith, Josh McCown, Bryce Petty, Sam Darnold, Josh McCown, Darnold, Luke Falk, Sam Darnold, Joe Flacco.
I saw the Luke Falk game against the Eagles.
There you go. So if you're the Jets, aren't you sick and tired of this? Take the second pick. We'll get the arguably the third best quarterback in the league right now in his prime. It seems like a no-brainer, and I know it's a haul, and I know it's too much, but if you're the Jets, screw it.
But, by the way, Mark Sanchez made 2 AFC championship games with the New York Jets.
He did.
Pretty amazing.
It is.
But beyond that, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. You have a proven commodity, and you're coming off Sam Darnold. Now, you can blame it on Adam Gase or whatever, and that's legitimate.
It is.
And I think whoever they trade Sam Darnold to, likely, I think the Chicago Bears, that's how they're going to talk themselves into it. They're going to say, well,
it's not his fault.
Yeah, he's a really talented kid, but Adam Gase ruined him. And by the way, they might be right.
Yeah.
So that's my point there. The issue to me, though, is number 2 overall and how that affects the Eagles. So if you're making that trade for Deshaun Watson, okay, what is Houston doing with that pick? Do they want Sam Darnold? Do they think Sam Darnold could be their quarterback and then pick Jamar Chase at number 2 overall? Or did they just say, no, we don't want Sam Darnold. We'll just take Zach Wilson. And then it wouldn't affect the Eagles that much because the draft board kind of stays the same, just different teams. My whole issue is how do you get Justin Fields down to the Eagles? How do you get Justin Fields to 6? Is it possible to get Justin Fields for 6? Because if it is, the Eagles have to jump. Have to. And I know you're giving me that dirty look.
I know, man.
I've heard it from so many fans. It's the same player as Jalen Hurts. It is not the same player. The traits are so much more explosive. There's a reason you're talked about in the top 5 versus 53.
53, right.
I mean, they're not. They have some of the similar playing style, but they are not the same player. And when you have the opportunity to get a player with that type of ceiling at the game's most important position, your mind has to be a blank slate. You can't worry about, okay, Carson Wentz didn't last as long as we hoped. I've heard that criticism. Other Ohio State quarterbacks, whoever they might be.
I hate
that. It's the dumbest.
I hate that.
It's the dumbest.
That's so dumb. That is so dumb.
You even hear it more with Trey Lance because it's North Dakota State coming straight off Carson Wentz. But, first thing you learn as a scout, don't scout the helmet. First thing they tell you, do not scout the helmet. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to hear about Art Schlichter back in the day.
Who?
Exactly. Look up Art Schlichter.
I don't even know how to spell that.
He had a gambling issue.
Okay.
But he's a first-round
pick. Can I get him on the show?
Great college player. And obviously he did not turn out to be very good in pros. And there's been many since then as well. But nonetheless, how does it affect the Philadelphia Eagles? And can you get Justin Fields? Boy, a trade would make that. If the Houston Texans like Sam Darnold, that would be the perfect situation for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Can you talk that out? Because I genuinely don't know. Okay, so the Jets trade the 2nd overall pick.
They would be trading the 2nd overall pick to Houston with Sam Darnold and more first-round picks. So Houston has their quarterback. They're not taking a quarterback at number 2. That knocks Zach Wilson down to at least 3, and you're pushing the quarterbacks down the board. So anytime you can push a quarterback down the board, it's helpful.
Sure.
And we've already seen Justin Fields. Mel Kiper Jr. got a lot of press this week about getting asked a question about some of the hits Justin Fields is taking, which are not fair, probably, because he doesn't come off his first read. We talked about that on the Fix last night, I think, or a couple days ago. What do you want him to do?
Right, the guy's open.
Yeah,
it's like no, I can't. I can't.
I got to prove it to some guy in his mom's basement in advance of the draft. I got to go to my third progression.
Yeah, you go to the opposing corner. Like, listen, man, this is the route he's running. I really need you to stay on him, and I need to throw a dime.
You Crash Davis, your receiver.
Yeah.
Here comes the curveball. When you speak of me, speak well. I mean, if
So
your first
dumb.
option is open, that's where you throw the football and you see the arm talent and all that. I mean,
that's why so much of this draft talk is just it's nonsense because a lot of the noise is just coming from people that are idiots. Let's just be honest. I mean, they are, right? And they get play on it. Like
all right. I like you went farther than me. I just said Mom's basement.
I mean, I don't know which one's worse.
They got the $99 of disposable income for NFL Game Pass, and they're feeling froggy.
They're all cocky, yeah.
Well, he has to get past his first progression, so I got to prove to this guy, that I can move across the field. So, I mean that. And by the way, we were also talking about that pre-show. Mm-hmm. That's the difficult part of being a real scout. You have to. It's not only about evaluation. You have to project forward.
Yeah.
So you don't know. I mean, he's never for same thing with Mac Jones in Alabama. You do not know if he can do some of the things that pro quarterbacks have to do because you can't see them because their teams are so good.
Yeah.
And that's where the projection comes into it. And that's the difficult part.
That's another thing I don't like is, and we heard this with Justin Jefferson last year. Like, they get criticized for being on great college teams. Like, oh, well, they're not really that good. The team was so good. Like, what? Yeah. You want someone that was in that type of culture. You want someone that elevated their play in that type of environment and situation. You're only going to draft people from Villanova. No offense to Brian Westbrook and Villanova, but you get my point.
Well, yeah. I mean, and one of the things I said about Jefferson leading up to last year's draft, because I had the Eagles taking him, was the fact that he elevated his play in the biggest stages and the national championship against the top talent. And they would say he's not as good as Jamar Chase. No, he's not as physically gifted, but he outperformed Jamar Chase at LSU.
Is that ego? Is that ego from the front offices and scouts? Like, we're not going to take the obvious player who was in the national title game where the whole world saw. We're going to go down to TCU and take Jalen Reagor. You don't know about him. We did our scouting.
Yeah, well, I think part of it is ego. Part of it is listening to wrong people. Lincoln Riley told him to take Jalen Reagor. Rich Scanzarello told him to take Jalen Reagor. They wanted a certain type of player, that jet sweep orbit motion. And Jefferson isn't that. So, it didn't work out. Maybe it'll work out in year 2, year 3, year 4. We talked about receivers last night on the Fix, and you'll see that on the YouTube channel today. So click on that to JAKIB Media YouTube page, and we're going to wrap all this up in the final segment of the show, Eagles, quarterbacks, draft, AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Extending the Play continues. Welcome back. South Jersey, AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio, extending the play, home stretch on a dreary Saturday morning. So we hope we picked up your spirits a little bit with a little NFL Eagles talk. We'll kind of wrap it up here, Ryan, with the draft and speculation on what the Eagles might do at number 6 overall. Obviously, there's a lot of holes on this team. So, I mean, it's the old theory that, put a blindfold on Howie Roseman, give him a dart, put 10 names up there. He's probably not going to make a mistake because they need help at so many different positions. And if you talk to NFL people, there's always that fall off from the top tier of the draft to the second tier. It's probably about 10 It's not that deep this year. But, I mean, you're comfortably in that.
Yeah, right in the middle.
At number 6. So you're going to get, in theory, a really talented player, even if you stay put. I've heard a lot of people talking about trading back. There you got to be careful because that tier 2, it's going to drop off pretty quickly. So you don't want to go back too far.
No. But what are the chances that, or maybe not the chances, but should the Eagles consider, and we've heard this a lot, should they consider trading Jalen Hurts? And this only comes from someone that really would like to see them go a different direction. And I'm not going to be screaming if they go quarterback and keep Jalen Hurts, but they have so many options, I think, is part of the point of that question, too.
Well, yeah. And, there was talk of, can you trade Jalen Hurts and try to rebuild with Carson Wentz? I think that was more legitimate. I mean, in theory, if Houston calls you up and says, you know what? Jalen Hurts is a Houston kid. We love him. We think he's going to be a star quarterback. Obviously, you know what's going on with our quarterback. We have to move on. Are you willing to give us 6 overall, 2 future first-round picks, Jalen Hurts for Deshaun Watson?
Oh, man.
I got to listen to that.
Absolutely.
I got to listen to that.
Why haven't we talked about that sooner? That's interesting, John.
Well, I don't think it's realistic, but yeah, it's off-season fodder. But I mean, I would do it in a half second.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, and one thing the Eagles, and I've criticized them a lot, but one thing they do well is understand the value of positions and certainly draft capital. Mm-hmm. And they understand at 6 overall, certain positions you probably shouldn't take at 6 overall. Tight end being one of them. So Kyle Pitts, unless you're going to play him as a weapon, unless you're going to play him as something other than a tight end, great player, but Eagles aren't going to pick him. They just aren't. Even with Brian Johnson, who obviously coached him at Florida.
Yep.
So they understand, look, they probably got to get a quarterback. If they don't get a quarterback, they want to get a defensive lineman, and there aren't any defensive linemen in the conversation. Offensive linemen, there's a couple. Sewell, Rashawn Slater, probably top 10 level picks. But they got a lot of offensive tackles who at least have some upside. Jordan Mailata, Andre Dillard, Jack Driscoll. They still have Lane Johnson. So if they can't get Justin Fields and they don't believe in Trey Lance, that's kind of the worst case scenario. Like, what do you do at that point? Do you just take Devontae Smith at a position, what the thing about receivers, and I use Calvin Johnson, I think on your show, could have been on a different show, but look, that's one of the most talented players ever. He's going into the Hall of Fame. Phenomenal at every level. Just so much respect. What did the Detroit Lions do with Calvin Johnson?
They wasted him. What do you mean? What did they do?
I don't think they wasted him. He was phenomenal.
Well, he was unbelievable, yeah, but he just...
But my point is, there's only so much impact you can have on the game as a wide receiver. And you're not, my larger point there is you ain't getting Calvin Johnson in Devontae Smith or even Jamar Chase. They're not going to be that good.
Okay, that's fair, but I would say Calvin Johnson in this era would be more impactful than even the era he was in. Would that be fair to say, or not really?
A little bit, yeah, because it's more pass heavy, but still you still need a vehicle to get him the football. You think about Julio Jones is essentially the modern Calvin Johnson. Great player, phenomenal, a multi-time All-Pro. I'm not going to – everything about him is great, but he's a receiver. He can only have a certain impact on the game because you need a vehicle to get him the football. And even if he has a big game, you're talking 8 for 160, he's touching it 8 times.
Yeah, but the impact is more than just the amount of catches.
Oh, sure.
I
covered Randy Moss. There's the biggest
impact,
biggest impact receiver of all time. He was on 2 of the greatest teams I've ever seen. The Patriots, who were 16-0, lost to the Giants in the Super Bowl. Vikings, 98 Vikings, who lost to the Saints, I believe, in the NFC Championship game. He was phenomenal on both of those teams. They didn't win the Super Bowl. Quarterback is more important. I don't know how I mean, it just is. It just is.
But you could argue, and you brought this up last night on my show, that it's what, chicken or the egg, where, yes, you need a quarterback to throw it to him, but you can say the same thing on the flip side. Like, you need, okay, we have the quarterback, we being the Eagles, let's say. A young quarterback needs some type of offense.
Look, if you can get a great player, get a great player.
Yeah.
And then kind of build out from there. But where I do agree with Howie Roseman, and it's an indictable offense to agree with Howie Roseman in Philadelphia.
It is.
But
it is.
I'm not afraid of getting indicted. I agree with him that certain positions should be valued in the top 10, and it starts. The Eagles are right. It starts with quarterback, and then it goes from offensive line to defensive line, and that's basically where I think they're going to end up. But it's fun talking about it, and that's what we do every week, and that's why we extend the play. The Fix, Monday through Friday with Ryan Rothstein. I'm there every single night at 7:30. Then we extend your play on Saturdays from 10 to 11 here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Great show. Stay tuned for branded radio here on the JAKIB Media Sports Network. We'll have more Expanding the Play next week here on AM 1490. Until then, keep being Russell Wilson. Keep extending. Keep running away from those offensive linemen.
Ask for more responsibility.
Yes. We'll see you, South Jersey.
The middle.
I'm out on fishing in areas like...
Come on, bro. You're about to have a kid, and he's going to want to go fishing. Uncle B can't take him fishing all the time. You got to learn to fish, bro.
It's a good point.
What do you mean it's a good point? My ability to father my child relies solely on taking him fishing?
Yes, Mr. Predicto.
All right, what's the question for Mr. Predicto here?
About your ability to father a child.
Well, it has to be yes or no, okay?
Will your son want to go fishing?
Well, my son, my boy, want to fish.
The signs say no.
Huh? Oh! That's it. I'm walking off the set like Maury. Boom, boom. I'm out.
Drop the mic.
See ya.
You're not capable of dropping the mic.
Oh, my goodness.
I'll roll with that Mr. Predict. This is my guy right here.
The Middle with Eitan Shander, Barrett Brooks, and Harry Mays. Weekdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern.